Joining the conversation now is Irma Olguin Jr., who is the CEO and co-founder of Bitwise Industries. While she's giving her presentation, remember you have an opportunity to ask her some questions, and so drop those into the chat, and we'll address them with her after the presentation. Irma, take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation. You're exactly right. That is my origin story. I began life in the center of California, which when you picture California, you're usually thinking about palm trees and beaches and the Silicon Valley and all these wonderful things that we talk about in media and in books. But that's not really the California that I'm from. I'm from Fresno, which is a metropolis of about 1 million people in the heart of California, right there in the center. And we are the breadbasket of the world. And what a lot of people don't know about the Central Valley, which is where Fresno sits, is that we produce between 20 and 30% of the world's food. What that means is that agriculture has always been the driving industry in this place. It built these cities, that is the back on which we drive our economies, but it's also created a system where you have these giant swaths, these giant tracts of land that are owned, operated, and benefited to a very small set of folks in that place. And then you've got the vast majority of folks who do not benefit from the management and the ownership of that land and that production. And those are the farm laborers and the field laborers that make the food, right? Who literally produce the world's food. That's my story. That's the background from which I come. And it is a common story right here in Central California. I am a third generation Mexican American. My family immigrated here from the south of Texas, following the crops, looking for work. And that is what they did. They were field laborers from the time I was very small. My grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, cousins, my parents, brother and sister got my first job when I was 6 years old, rolling raisins under the sun in California. And like I said, that's the story of a lot of the folks that I grew up with. This is not uncommon for us. But that deep divide between the two kinds of people creates the scenario where you're looking around yourself and you're saying, this is what my cousins do. This is what my brother and sister do. This is what my aunts and uncles do. This is likely what I'm going to do as well. And so that creates a situation where you're not really college bound, right? You're not looking one day to run a technology company or to be the CEO of that technology company. It just isn't part of your own life vision. But that wasn't to be my story. And so there were a couple of really neat sort of serendipitous moments in my life that created this moment where I get to stand here and give this speech and others like it and get to talk about things like generational wealth and how we change, how money changes hands in this country. One of those moments was when I was 15 years old. I was 15 years old. I was sitting in a classroom at my high school, and there was a message over the PA speaker. And the message was that the PSAT was being held in the cafeteria. And I remember thinking to myself that I didn't know what the PSAT was, but I did know, because I was 15 years old, I did understand that I could get out of class for half a day if I would just go to the cafeteria. So like any 15-year-old, I left class, I went to the cafeteria, and I sat for that test, a test that I would then learn would be the single most important test I'd ever take in my life. And that resulted in marketing mail from colleges with logos and mascots that I recognized from sports teams started arriving at my house. I started to see the catalogs in full color, glossy, heavy paper catalogs. And for the first time, it occurred to me to ask myself whether or not college or higher education is for me. And you're young and you're excited, you're 15, 16 years old, you're flipping through these catalogs and you realize it's still not for you once you get to the pricing page. It's still for other people. But that was also not to be. The mail kept coming. And in that mail was a letter, was a full ride scholarship, full academic scholarship. And I take this letter to my parents and I'm like, Mom and Dad, this is very exciting. I'm going to go to college. And they essentially said back to me, how do you think you're going to get there? Right? So it was this moment in time, again, you're 16 years old and your life is in front of you. You've never seen this for yourself, and you begin to ask yourself if this is for you, and your parents have to be the ones who say, it's still not. Transportation will still be the thing that keeps you from being able to go and take advantage of this opportunity. And so that was my life. I was going to accept that. But my family's very scrappy, and we banded together, and I convinced them essentially to recycle cans and bottles with me all summer long. So we would go out in this beat up old pickup truck, and we would collect cans and bottles from the fields, and we would recycle them until there was enough change in that pile to buy a Greyhound bus ticket. And that Greyhound bus ticket, that missing piece of the opportunity, would be my sort of ticket to higher education, and then eventually to opportunity in an industry that would change my life. And so I did. I rode 2,500 miles from Fresno, California to Toledo, Ohio to arrive at orientation to claim my scholarship. And then and then realize, you get there and you're 17, you're across the country, you don't know anybody. You get there and you still sort of know that you don't know how this system really works. And I remember looking at the woman across from me when she was taking my registration information at orientation. And she asks me, what's your major? And again, not having been college bound, not having sort of come up in a system where that was a norm, I didn't know what that meant and had to ask, what's a major? And so she hands me back that same full color, glossy catalog, and she says, you look through these are the major areas of study, and you choose one of those. And so I did. I flipped through that catalog, that same one where I started to wonder if this was going to be for me. And I came across this glass building. And it was this beautiful new building that the university had newly built. And I thought to myself, at 17 years old, across the country, you don't know anyone, thought to myself, man, wouldn't it be cool to take classes in a glass building? And that is the sort of serendipitous story of how I became a computer engineer. That glass building was the College of Engineering. And that industry transformed my existence. It was like the thing that the rest of my existence would sort of begin to revolve around a bit at a time. And that was really exciting for me. Right. And so I remember getting my first job in this industry, lowest on the totem pole, brand new, entry level, could not be more junior software engineer. And I remember getting into that first job, and with my first couple of checks, realizing I'm out earning everybody in my family. I am out earning everybody in my family. And it's one of those moments that you realize that your life is going to be forever changed. But I think where it really came home for me, and where it really started to really grip my heart, was I was working late with my colleagues, and it was an all-male, all-white male sort of cohort of folks that I was working with, and I was the only brown person, the only female, the only LGBTQ person in the room, and we were working late. They were wonderful people, and we decided to order some pizza. And so they call in the pizza, and when the guy comes to deliver it, one of my colleagues asks me for a 20, and so I give him a 20, and he goes to pay the guy at the door. And I remember very, very clearly my colleague turning to me and asking me, hey, Irma, how much do you want to leave for tip? And I responded to him across the room, tell him to keep the change. And I have to tell you, that was one of those moments where your whole body just sort of goes cold, right down the center of your body, and your elbows get weak, and you start seeing white, and you don't really hear anything for a couple of seconds. Like everything is just wrong. But it was like this moment of realization that my life would forever be different, because I had not ever in my existence been able to look across at somebody and say, hey, keep the change. I didn't count whether or not I needed those few extra bucks for rent. I did not count whether or not that was going to be another gallon of gas in the tank. I did not wonder if I was going to use those few extra bucks to buy an extra pack of hot dogs. I didn't ask myself any of those things. All I knew was that he could keep the change, and those few extra bucks might make a difference in that guy's life. That was a defining moment for me. I knew then that I needed to take all of these collected technology skills and make those matter. Take everything that Ohio had taught me and bring it back to California. And what I knew then was that I needed to find a way to give more people that feeling of being able to have a sense of agency in their lives, where they get to choose what the few extra bucks are spent on. And so that's what happened. There was a few starts and stops, but I arrived back in California, right here in the San Joaquin and Central Valley, and realized that there were some things that we could in fact do to change the way that people like me grow up and what their opportunities are. And the first of those is you've got to expose them, right? You've got to show them that this is even possible, because I can tell you, reflecting back, 6 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, I did not see any of it as an option because I didn't know that it existed. And so eventually in 2013, started a company called Bitwise Industries, believing in my bones, myself and my co-founder, that we could use the technology industry to fix a city, this very, very challenged place where a lot more people grow up like me than you might think, and provide opportunity to these folks that would forever and profoundly change their existence. And that company, Bitwise Industries, started out as this really simple premise. We asked ourselves, what did we not do in Fresno that other primary markets had done with the technology industry? And can we do something about that? And very specifically, how can we take this lived experience, this what we know are the real struggles, and turn that into a business that provides opportunity in this very specific way? We landed on three things. We landed on three deliberate pillars of business that we now use to create technology ecosystems that ignite the technology industry in underdog cities. So the first of those is very simple. Geekwise Academy, this is our answer to technology education. This is our answer to the question of how do you provide an on-ramp into the industry for the son or daughter of a migrant farm worker, for somebody who's coming from a story of poverty, for someone who has previously been excluded from the most exciting segments of our economy. So that's Geekwise Academy. That is our answer to that. The second pillar is what we call infrastructure. It is a sense of place. It is a sense of community. It is, if you are in one of these underdog cities and you're young and you're asking yourself, how do I get into this industry? Where do I physically go to get into this industry? And if there isn't an answer to that, the truth of the matter is that these young, ambitious, and scrappy people will go somewhere else. They will flee to primary markets to go and accomplish that dream. So sense of place, infrastructure, that is our second pillar. And then the third is proof, or industry. It's that job. It is that internship. It is that apprenticeship. It is that first time you get a check that's meaningful, where you're asking yourself, am I out earning my family? And when you look at those three things taken together, I mean, when you piece them out, they might seem like, oh, that's a lot of business. That's a lot of things to do. But when they work together, you could come up with basically a starter pack for how to ignite the possibility in a person's life. And reflecting on my own, Geekwise Academy is that scholarship, right? It's that technology education. It's that accidental sort of falling into the technology industry that happened for me. That sense of place, our second pillar, that business of ours, that's our glass building. That is giving people like me a sense of place that actualizes the experience of being a technologist. It is that exciting moment of saying, this is my community, this is my tribe, this is where I come if I want to be good at this. And then that last thing, industry, that's my first job, right? That is when I realized I could tell somebody, hey, why don't you keep those few extra bucks? That matters, right? Being able to prove to the world that you can build and ship world-class software and world-class software companies using underdog talent in underdog cities, that's the business that we're in. And it's working, right? Like I said, that was in 2013. It's had quite the impact since then. We have our flagship product, so to speak, is right here in Fresno, California. 200 technology companies have chosen to locate in our downtown. 4,000 folks have come through our technology programs. 1,000 new jobs have been created in our city. But what is most exciting and most important to me is that those folks, that new technology workforce, looks like our county. It's 50% female and gender nonconforming. It's 50% minority, which in the Central Valley means Latinx. It is 20% first generation, of which a lot of the folks that I grew up with feel a sense of unity and accomplishment when they know that their community is rising up. And so those demographics really matching the county in which we serve is an accountability metric for us. And then it was mentioned earlier during the intro that yeah, it's working. And we went out to raise a Series A last year, and it was wildly successful. And we were able to pull in a $27 million Series A, which is one of the largest Series A ever led by a female Latinx founder. And so we're excited about that. So we're expanding to these other places, other underdog cities throughout the United States. One of them is Bakersfield, one of them is Merced. We're going to expand to a fourth city in California. And truth be told, now we're looking across the country, asking ourselves, what is it that we need to do? We know this model is portable. We know that it provides opportunity to folks who aren't otherwise invited to this industry. And we know that it creates a diverse and inclusive technology workforce that the world has been clamoring for. And so we're really excited to reach across the country and to provide this opportunity to other folks, because for us, when we start to think about what new capitalism really is and what that really means. I mean, we can talk about it in really grand terms, and we can talk about equity from like an ownership standpoint, and we can talk about the ways the different levels of government might play into it. But what it really kind of comes down to, if you ask us, is it's just very simply giving more folks that moment where they realize that they are going to achieve agency, where they're going to be able to say to another human being, hey, keep the change. And that's what we do. That is what we are about. Like I said, we have been at this for 7 going on 8 years, and we are looking at what a national strategy might look like next, so that we can redefine what it looks like, what it means to have opportunity in this one specific industry that has an unmet wealth of high wage, high growth jobs.
Thanks so much, Irma. We've got one question for the audience if you're up for it. How do you combat the do-gooder paternalism that one might imagine confronts you when you're sharing Bitwise with would-be partners or funders?
I think that if doing good is not part of the shared ethos, then they're probably not an appropriate partner for what we're doing. But if we can both come to the table and realize that you can do 2 things at once, you can in fact build a wildly scalable business out of overlooked talent, and at the same time give that same talent opportunity that maybe they haven't achieved in other places, then we can do some work together.
For sure. I love that. Thank you so much for joining our conversation today. Your testimony and your story about your family raising $78 to make sure you had a way to college and just what you're doing at Bitwise is really an inspiration, and I think it resonates with a lot of folks. Your testimony, just to mention one of my own really briefly, like the idea of such a seemingly small amount of money making a difference. Like, I understand that because I needed a $2,000 scholarship for a Kaplan course to take an LSAT prep course, and I used that $2,000 to gain admission to Harvard Law School. And so it's really $2,000 changed my entire life. $78 changed your entire life. And imagine the millions of people out there who are not allowed to realize their potential just based on not having $2,000 or $78.
I think that's exactly it. That's exactly it. It requires actually a surprisingly little amount of money to change somebody's life, but it does have to be given with intention or gotten with intention, and it can forever inextricably change an existence.
Yeah, for sure. We've got one more question I think we've got time for. This one says, how can those of us who are or who have been fortunate practically what can we do to help increase exposure for those who haven't had the same opportunities?
Yeah, it matters who you're bringing with you, right? So those of us who have achieved a level of agency or privilege, it matters who we're dragging along behind us. And that doesn't just mean, inviting them to your Thanksgiving so they have a place to go. That's important. But also, who are you introducing those people to for a paid internship? Who are you getting hired into the entry-level jobs that you know exist in your network? Who are you buying your software from? Is it, in fact, like a giant technology co, or is it the underdog who can also serve you well? Those
Right.
decisions, opening your network and opening the way that you buy product and service, those matters a great deal.
For sure. All right. I think that does it. Thank you again so much for joining this conversation. We've learned a lot from you. You are truly an inspiration, and the work you're doing at Bitwise. Like, I just can't wait to see what's up next for you and the company. Thank you again.
Appreciate you. Thank you.